Welcome to the 700 Club. China needs to come clean on the origin of the coronavirus. That's what Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told CBN News in an exclusive interview.
The secretary also would not rule out that China, Iran, and Russia could be behind a nasty disinformation campaign, blaming the United States for the virus. Here's CBN's David Brody.
With an invisible virus that has engulfed the world, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has his hands full. First and foremost, getting answers from China. Are they telling the truth about the origin of the virus? And if not, what else might they be hiding? That's where we started our conversation.
Do you believe the Chinese Communist Party is lying to the world right now?
David, it's incredibly important, even as we sit here today, that we get to the bottom of what transpired and that the Chinese Communist Party come clean about how this all began. Look, we know it started in Wuhan, China. That's the origination of the virus. We need to figure out how it happened. It's not just about political retribution or accountability. It's important today. We need to know this so we can save lives going forward. We need our scientists, our academics, our epidemiologists all to have access to the data, access to a sample of the virus, access to the places it might have come to. Those are all things that matter so that we can solve this problem, get our country back to work, and save lives.
Pompeo says it doesn't help with countries like China, Russia, and Iran all pushing bogus theories about how the virus started, like from U.S. troops or an American bioweapon being used for political purposes.
Is this a coordinated effort by those countries?
Boy, it's hard to know the answer to that. What you can say is they're observing what the others are doing, and then they're responding in a group. That is, they are taking information being provided by one, and others are promoting it online and elsewhere, too. This information, David, this disinformation campaign matters. The American people all across the world go to sources to get information for their safety, information for the health and that of their family members. It is nasty when a government runs a disinformation campaign that puts those people's lives at risk and their health at risk. And these governments need to stop, and they need to stop doing it in a coordinated way as well, if that's what's actually taking place.
So you're not necessarily discounting the fact that it could be a coordinated effort. You say more investigation is needed on this, then?
We see very similar messages propagated by very similar means. It's difficult to know the level of coordination.
What Pompeo does know is the World Health Organization botched its role in protecting citizens. That led the president to temporarily stop providing funding.
What would get the WHO back in good standing with the United States at this point? I mean, in other words, what needs to happen?
Well, David, it's hard to know. It's important that your viewers understand the history of the World Health Organization as well. This is not the first time that that institution has failed to protect the world. You may recall SARS. The same kind of thing happened where the WHO was unable to do its primary function, stopping a pandemic from spreading across the world. And this time they were unable to. You can see it. They said, don't close your borders. President Trump made the decision to do that and keep American people safe. They were too slow in declaring that this was something that could transmit from human to human. Those are the kind of things that the WHO has failed in.
Democrats say it's the Trump administration that failed to take early action against the virus. Recently, the presumptive Democrat nominee for President Joe Biden said he would have sent health experts to China. Pompeo strenuously pushed back against that.
This president and this administration worked diligently to get Americans on the ground there in China to help the World Health Organization try to get in there as well. We were rebuffed. The Chinese government wouldn't let it happen.
And then he lowered the boom.
The previous administration allowed China to walk all over us and gain trade, grain opportunities, create wealth and trade benefits for China. This president's taken fundamentally a 180 degrees different approach with respect to how we respond to the challenges that China presents to American security.
So you're suggesting that the previous administration was soft on China or dealing with them?
Relative to this administration, they were wildly soft.
This administration has been anything but soft on the country of Iran. This week, the regime provocatively launched a military satellite into orbit, and President Trump ordered America's military to sink any Iranian boats harassing U.S. ships.
You've said that Iran needs to be held accountable for what they've done. How exactly might that happen going forward, Mr. Secretary?
What we intend to do is to gather the nations across the world. The French put out a statement today. They, too, know how dangerous and destabilizing what Iran did. I'm confident that there will now be more countries that understand what President Trump has understood since he first came into office, that the Iran deal was a crazy, bad deal, that we all need to move away from it, that the world needs to disassociate itself from Iran, and that the community of nations needs to come together and convince the Iranian regime to cease their activity, which has led to them being the world's largest state-sponsored terror for so many years.
Given terror threats in key regions, plus a hidden enemy threatening the world, this secretary faces a challenge not seen in generations. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Well, we're all facing the challenge, but part of this challenge is this disinformation campaign. It was started out of China, and the Chinese foreign minister is suspect number one in this. He claimed that the virus started with a U.S. serviceman who was in China for some Ironman competition. It was a completely bogus story, and he's since backed off of it, but that's been the narrative, and that narrative has taken off and has been replicated, and they're using tactics that unfortunately we're all too familiar with in terms of planting this kind of story in social media and in news outlets, and apparently there are people more than willing to try to trash the United States in this. And so if you hear this story that somehow or other it's a military weapon invented in the United States and it was planted in China, all this kind of thing, as an American, you look at it and you laugh at it, but realize I got a report yesterday, in the streets of Mexico, they earnestly believe, the people earnestly believe that this virus started in a laboratory in the United States. This kind of disinformation is long-term damaging to our foreign interests, to the interests of the United States people, and this is a serious matter. In other news, Vice President Mike Pence says the worst of the coronavirus epidemic may be behind us by early summer. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. The vice president's optimistic statement comes as states are getting ready to gradually reopen their economies. And there is some good news about the impact of heat on the coronavirus. George Thomas has that story.
In Georgia today, life is getting back to normal. Gyms, hair salons, even bowling alleys are open for business with modifications.
You're not using our snack bar, we're not using our lounge.
Georgia's fast reopening has drawn criticism from the president, who strongly disagrees with it, along with numerous lawmakers. Other states also plan to reopen, but under a more gradual, phased-in approach, as recommended by the administration.
At the present moment, 16 states have released formal reopening plans.
The White House also encourages all states to restart elective surgeries whenever possible. And promising news, new research by the Department of Homeland Security shows the coronavirus dies quickly when exposed to heat and humidity. Add sunlight, and it dies even faster.
In the summer, we know that summer-like conditions are going to create an environment where the transmission can be decreased, and that's an opportunity for us to get ahead.
But he says warm weather shouldn't replace enhanced hand washing, mask wearing, or social distancing, which President Trump says he may extend until early summer or beyond, based on conditions across the country.
I think people are going to know just out of common sense. At some point, we won't have to do that. But until we feel it's safe, we're going to be extending.
The same government lab also tested disinfectants, finding bleach kills the virus in 5 minutes. Isopropyl alcohol kills it in 30 seconds.
If we continue these mitigation efforts in the days ahead, as states implement their policies, including phased reopening that will preserve those gains, we do believe by early summer we could be in a much better place as a nation with much of this coronavirus epidemic behind us.
And we're still learning more about the origins of the virus. A new study published by researchers at Hong Kong University reveals 4 times more people were infected in China than the official numbers released by the Chinese government. George Thomas, CBN News.
Thanks, George. Well, even as anxiety about the spread of COVID-19 has been rising, new technology promises to help contain it. But at what cost? Senior Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon looks at what Americans may have to give up in order to track the virus.
For the first time during a pandemic, most Americans carry a potential superpower. In addition to a smartphone's many purposes, the very latest could become a personal biolab. As pressure mounts for states to reopen, technology will soon tell us who's at risk of catching COVID-19. In Connecticut, a police department is testing a drone designed to monitor people's temperatures, heart, and respiratory rates. It can also detect sneezing and coughing in a crowd. Meanwhile, Facebook offering an opt-in symptom survey, asking users to report if they have a fever, cough, or shortness of breath. The social media giant then mapping responses from millions of Americans. This as Apple and Google develop a system to measure your risk by tracing your contacts. With these apps, as your phone's Bluetooth comes into contact with other phones, they share strings of numbers. If you then test positive for COVID-19, your phone can alert those phones. The companies maintain your identifying information will be protected.
It's an amazing thing, but a lot of people have some very big constitutional problems with it.
The White House Coronavirus Task Force is considering the implications. During crises like after 9/11, Americans often prefer protection over civil liberty, but experts warn it's a slippery slope.
COVID-19 is very scary, and issues of privacy and things are easy to fall by the wayside and very hard to recover once they're compromised.
As companies reopen their doors, people may feel pressure to use this new technology to maintain their livelihoods.
There could be employers who say you can't come to work unless you show your app, or grocery stores who do the same thing, or maybe you can't get benefits, like the unemployment benefits, unless you can prove you have that app.
Testifying before senators this month, law professor Ryan Callow said a foreign operative who wished to sow chaos, an unscrupulous political operative who wished to dampen political participation, or a desperate business owner who sought to shut down the competition all could use self-reported instances of COVID-19 to achieve their goals.
The problem here is we don't have a federal privacy law, so this all has to come from written agreements with tech companies, with application developers, with governments. What we'd much rather see is these principles enshrined in law.
Laws, she says, with guarantees only necessary data is collected that's used for a specific purpose and then deleted. And since technology usually moves much faster than government, Chang suggests lawmakers stick to the basics.
So what we need to start from are our principles, which hopefully haven't changed, that we value individuals, we value privacy, we value rights, we have rights of appeal and things like that.
Chang says for lawmakers, there is a delicate balance between keeping people safe and allowing them to be free. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Woodstock, Virginia.
Thanks, Jennifer. Gordon, I was reading this morning, police in Israel stop using mobile phone location data out of privacy concerns.
Oh, that's a good news. But you read the book of Revelation, you read some of the things in the Bible, the prophecies about the last days, and you do wonder how could all this happen. But here we have very serious people talking about, well, you can't go into a grocery store unless you can show a particular app on your phone, and you can't buy or sell. These things are literally materializing before our eyes. What we thought couldn't happen is now happening. And that's leading to uncertainty, anxiety, and fear. All of these things, all of these feelings and more have been in our lives since the COVID-19 breakout. It seems like a long time ago, but when you look at it, it's just a few weeks. And already it seems like we're in times of desperation. So the question is, where can we turn for help? Well, the answers to today's crisis can be found in scriptures written 3,000 years ago. Listen to the words of King David from Psalm 20. May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. May the name of the God of Jacob defend you. May he send you help from the sanctuary and strengthen you out of Zion. May he remember all your offerings and accept your burnt sacrifice. May he grant you according to your heart's desire and fulfill all your purpose. we will rejoice in your salvation. And in the name of our God, we will set up our banners. May the Lord fulfill all your petitions. Now I know that the Lord saves his anointed. He will answer him from his holy heaven with the saving strength of his right hand. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God. They have bowed down and fallen, but we have risen and stand upright. Save, Lord, may the King answer us when we call.